What's it like reading over old letters from your parents or your mother or these people? What is it like? Are you discovering things you didn't realize? Are you getting new insights? What's the experience like?
Well, I read the strangest letter the other day. It was a letter from my mother to Jean-Pierre, that is Pauline's son. So she was in the family for a maximum of, I don't know, what, 2 years? And I have a picture of her at somebody's house party, and she's leaning toward Jean-Pierre, who's leaning down toward her. She's sitting on the sofa. And I never thought to see these two people in one picture. And so it's a gathering, and they happen to be there, and somebody took a picture. But then I saw this letter from the same time period, and I think she's already gone. Maybe she's writing from France, and she's not yet divorced from my father. I thought, wow, I would not have predicted that. It was like there was a relationship there. She, I think, was possibly trying to be that mentor for this boy with quite a handful of a mother. I don't know that she was trying to be another mother, but she was a friendly adult. That was an interesting letter. Then letters from my father to Jean-Pierre when he was a youngster. So Jean-Pierre gave me, I don't even know why, an enormous box filled with files of his, letters, correspondence, mostly from old girlfriends. I haven't gone through that. But there was a small section that was family. Things from our grandmother, things from his mother. I don't remember if there were things from his father, but there was a lot from, and that letter from my mother was there. There was a lot from my father. There were letters from when he was a young man in college at MIT, giving advice, being fatherly, unclely to his nephew, all through the 60s and 70s when their relationship soured completely, when he was basically trying to get my father out of business. Where was I? Letters. You were asking me about things that surprised me. There are a lot of pictures. Letters from my grandmother to Jean-Pierre. I have letters of hers to me elsewhere. So it's like we're collecting pieces of Cecile from different sources, and I'm going to see what it comes out as. She wrote poorly in English, poorly in French. I don't know what her Russian was like, but I've seen letters of hers in Yiddish, and she writes well. I can't read it, but I can see that there's a fluency. She knows how to write, whereas these other scripts are not native to her.
You might discover some clues to the identity of her husband, Alexander, who's a real mystery.
He's a mystery, yeah. And I don't see any reference to him. Although I found one item with his handwriting, and it is to his daughter, and I think he's purchased some lotto ticket for her with a little note, if this wins, something or something, right? So that's kind of exciting. Then I have all of Leon Hendlein's stuff through Evelyn. And he had an early relationship to my family. They left the business in France in his name when they left. I'm not quite sure I understood why. And he ended up selling it or doing whatever the next step was, and then following them to America. he, I think, loved my grandmother, and I don't know that the feelings were reciprocated, but he ended up marrying Evelyn, who was a girlfriend of my father's when they, back in, I don't know, 1942, I'm not sure when, but I think they were on 57th Street. She was working as a dental hygienist at a dentist in the same building, I think. That's how they met. And then that didn't go anywhere, and I think Sioma, my father, introduced her to Leon, who was one generation older than my father. So, well, whatever.
Your father liked making different kinds of connections through books, through gifts. What about with people, connecting people? Or would you say he was more of a solo person?
I think he was a loyal friend. I don't think of him so much as a connector of people to people. I'm not sure about that question.
But he was very generous with people.
He was generous. Yes, he was generous with money. He was generous with things. He was Jacques Carpeau. The Carpeau family were friends from, maybe even from Russia, but certainly from France. And Jacques was my tutor one summer. I know that Sioma gave him a lot of nice suits or jackets. Jacques ended up being a conductor someplace in the south of France. Yeah, a conductor, musical conductor.
What was the story of your father's friend from Hastings-on-Hudson?
Jacques Artel.
Yeah, what was his story?
I think they must have met because Jacques and his brother were reps, either separately or together, for a textile company. And that's how they must have met Sioma. So they were these two attractive, Russian by birth, French guys who were Jewish. And Jacques married a Midwestern American beauty and moved to
Dobbs Ferry or Hastings?
Dobbs Ferry, Hastings.
Uh-huh.
And I think that must have been my father's idea of what you do when you get married based on Jacques' move. And so when he married my mother, who was a Southern American beauty, he moved to this house a couple of blocks away from Jacques.
And what did you discover about Jacques and his identity and the identity he presented to his children?
Oh, his children didn't know he was Jewish. They didn't know anything about him. He was a self-made invention, and he'd spent his life being a self-made invention. But I don't really want to go into Jacques' story right now. But they had something in common. They were these multicultural, assimilated Jews who ended up in America, as my father said, married to America. So I think in that sense they had something in common, both in the fashion industry. I remember Katie, the eldest daughter, who was around my age. I kept in touch with them all these years, particularly her mother. I didn't keep. I didn't have any relationship really with them, but they represented something that I thought was stable. When I came back to America, I must have sent a card or something and gone to visit. A little bit of travels back to the past. And there I met Katie and her sisters. Her sister had never known, and the sister's husband, and it was like jarring because it had nothing to do with who the mother and father were. And anyway, I sent the mother, Janet Artell. There's a picture of Janet holding me in her lap in the Hastings house when I was, Dobbs Ferry's house, when I was very, very young. And I sent her an invitation to an opening I had down at Yeshiva University Museum. And Katie showed up. She said her mother had Alzheimer's and she was taking care of her. And she came to the, instead of her mother. That was very nice. And then she asked me if I could come over to a side. She wanted to tell me something. What was it? What was it? So we went off to the side and she said, I just discovered my father's Jewish. Was Jewish. And I looked at her and I said, but of course he was. She looked at me, she said, I didn't know.